15 years after humanity first demonstrated dark matter technology, Dr. Sarah Chun stood before the largest gathering of species in recorded galactic history. The occasion was the dedication of Prometheus, memorial station built at the exact coordinates where Trademaster Velk's ship first encountered the human exploration vessel. The station floated in deep space, serving as both monument and functional waypoint for ships traveling routes that were unreachable before dark matter propulsion. Chan was 87 years old now, and her body showed the wear of decades spent pushing boundaries that others feared to approach. She walked slowly to the podium using a cane made from metal salvaged from the original Prometheus, which had been retired to a museum on Earth. Behind her stood representatives from 123 species who had developed dark matter capabilities through the Joint Technology Initiative. The crowd numbered in the thousands, with beings of every shape and size gathered to honor the moment that changed galactic civilization. Velk sat in the front row wearing ceremonial robes that marked him as Catherine Elder Ambassador, which was his species' highest diplomatic rank. Admiral Tanaka attended in full dress uniform alongside Admiral Krelvar, who had become an unexpected advocate for human Vryn. Cooperation Shimor led the initiative delegation, and her success over the past 5 years proved that leadership based on merit rather than species origin was possible. The ceremony began with traditional remembrances for the 247 humans who died during Project Nightfall's development. Chen read each name personally, which took over an hour, but she insisted that their sacrifice deserved individual recognition. She then recognized the alien researchers who died in subsequent accidents as dark matter technology spread, because progress always carried costs. List was shorter than it might have been thanks to safety protocols humanity shared freely, and Chun noted that cooperation had saved lives. When the formal remembrances concluded, Chun began her main address, and her voice carried across the crowd through translation systems that now used dark matter relays. She spoke about the moment Velk's ship appeared on human sensors and how humanity faced a choice between caution and courage. The safe path would have been accepting Council technology and spending centuries slowly advancing according to established patterns. Instead, humanity looked at forbidden technologies and asked why they were forbidden, which led to questioning whether impossibility was fact or failure of imagination. Chun explained that humans succeeded with dark matter, not because they were smarter than Council species, but because they approached the problem without preconceptions. The Council failed because they tried to force dark matter into theoretical boxes designed for conventional physics. Humans succeeded because they asked dark matter what it wanted to do and then built systems that worked with its nature. She emphasized that this was not genius, but rather audacity, which was humanity's defining characteristic, the willingness to look at rules written by civilizations millions of years old and politely suggest that maybe those rules were incomplete. Chen paused and looked across the crowd at species who once considered humanity primitive and dangerous. She reminded them that humanity shared everything they learned despite having every reason to hoard their advantage. The decision to share rather than dominate was not altruism but pragmatism, because humanity understood that climbing alone meant falling alone. She quoted an old human saying that rising tides lift all boats, and explained that humanity wanted a galaxy of partners, not subjects. The technology itself mattered less than the philosophy behind it, which was that limitations existed to be tested, not accepted. Chun acknowledged that not every species embraced change and that the Preservation Alliance raised valid concerns about social disruption. But she argued that trying to free civilization at any particular point was impossible because the universe itself was in constant motion. The choice was not between change and stability, but between managed transformation and chaotic collapse. Species that adapted thrived, while those that resisted found themselves irrelevant, which was a harsh lesson, but nature cared nothing for feelings she spoke about. The future and the regions of space now accessible thanks to dark matter propulsion entire. Galaxies that were theoretical abstractions could be reached within a human lifetime using technology that seemed impossible 2 decades ago. Chen suggested that the greatest discoveries still waited in unexplored regions and that cooperation will determine whether species thrived or merely survived. She concluded by returning to the moment of first contact and the choice that defined everything that followed. Humanity could have hidden their dark matter research and used their advantage to dominate, which was what galactic history suggested was normal instead. They demonstrated their capabilities openly and offered partnership to anyone willing to accept the risks. That choice made all the difference because it established trust that traditional power politics could never achieve. Chen stepped back from the podium to silence that lasted several seconds before the crowd erupted in applause. That continued for 5 minutes. She waved acknowledgement and then gestured to Velk, inviting the Kthron ambassador to join her. Velk approached and embraced Chen in a gesture that crossed species boundaries through genuine affection earned over 2 decades of friendship. He spoke briefly about how his species almost dismissed humanity as insignificant and how wrong that assessment proved to be. Kthron learned that significance came not from age or size, but from willingness to challenge. Accepted Limachimora spoke next, representing the generation that grew up with dark matter technology as normal rather than revolutionary. She described how young researchers from a dozen species now collaborated on projects their parents' generation considered impossible. The initiative had become something beyond human creation, which was a genuine galactic institution where species origin mattered less than competence. Even the Vrin contributed now, with Krelvar's own daughter leading their dark matter research division. The ceremony concluded with a flight demonstration as ships from 40 species launched simultaneously from the memorial station. They moved in perfect formation, using dark matter skips to create patterns of light across the void. The display lasted 30 minutes and showcased coordination that required technology and trust that did not exist before humanity arrived. Chen watched from the observation deck alongside old friends and colleagues who shared the journey. Dr. Marcus Webb stood beside her and commented that their success had been unlikely, bordering on miraculous. Chen disagreed and suggested that miracles were just physics nobody understood yet. She pointed out that every achievement humanity made followed logical steps from theories to tests to practical applications. The real miracle was not the technology, but the courage to try when everyone said trying meant death. Webb smiled and reminded her that 247 people did die, which suggested the warnings were not entirely wrong. Chen nodded and replied that those deaths mattered and that remembering them was essential, but she refused to believe that safety required abandoning ambition, because humans did not reach the stars through caution. The species that survived were those that balanced risk with preparation and accepted that progress required sacrifice. She watched the ships complete their demonstration and return to formation, while thinking about humanity's next challenges. Dark matter technology was revolutionary, but it was not the end of innovation, because the universe held secrets darker matter could not illuminate. Somewhere in the galaxy, younger researchers were probably already questioning the next set of impossible barriers. Chen hoped they would have the same audacity that let humanity transform galactic civilization. She hoped they would remember that rules were written by those who tried and failed, not by those who never attempted, and she hoped they would share their discoveries rather than hoard them, because cooperation multiplied success while competition divided it. The observation deck began clearing as attendees departed for ships that would scatter across the galaxy. Chen remained watching the memorial station float in space while considering her own next steps. Earth wanted her to lead deep space exploration using the latest dark matter vessels, capable of reaching distant galaxies. The prospect excited her despite her age because discovery was what made her feel. Livavalk approached and asked if she was ready to depart. Chun nodded and took one last look at the coordinates where everything began. She thought about Commander Jang and the crew of the original Prometheus, who could not have imagined what their first contact would unleash. They sought knowledge and found transformation, which was a fair trade in Chun's estimation. The shuttle carried her away from the memorial station toward a Kathran vessel waiting to jump to Earth behind them. The station's lights glowed in the darkness, marking the spot where humanity proved that audacity could reshape reality. Ships continued arriving and departing, using technology that seemed magical but was actually just applied curiosity and refusal to accept limitations. The galaxy had changed because humanity asked what if instead of accepting, why not Chun. Those during the journey and dreamed of dark matter currents flowing through space like rivers, waiting for explorers brave enough to navigate them. She woke as the ship emerged from the first species to officially request admission to the Joint Technology Initiative. Surprised everyone, including humanity itself. Trademaster Valk, now serving as Kathran ambassador, approached Dr. Sarah Chun 3 days after the council vote with a formal application. Chun invited him to her temporary quarters on Sanctum Prime and asked why the Kathran were willing to trust technology that had almost destroyed other civilizations. Valk explained that his species recognized something familiar in humanity, which was the stubborn refusal to accept limitations imposed by others. The Kathran homeworld had crushing gravity that made spaceflight theoretically impossible according to calculations by 3 visiting species. Those species suggested the Kathran content themselves with philosophical pursuits and abstract mathematics. Instead, the Kathran built rockets powerful enough to escape their gravity while losing thousands of pilots before achieving orbit. Valk said his people understood the price of reaching beyond established boundaries and respected humanity for paying that price. Willingly, Chun accepted the Kathran application personally and suggested they would make excellent partners. Over the following months, 11 more species applied with motivations ranging from genuine scientific curiosity to naked fear of being left behind. The Talari Collective sent their best quantum physicists, eager to learn from species that solve problems they considered impossible. The Myron, aquatic species, requested dark matter technology specifically to power ships capable of maintaining massive water environments during extended voyages. Even some Vrin scientists applied as individuals, though their government officially maintained opposition. Chun established the initiative headquarters on Way Station 17, where humanity first encountered galactic civilization, which felt appropriately symbolic. She assembled teams, mixing human researchers with alien specialists, and divided them into groups focused on specific applications. Power generation received priority since stable reactors would benefit every species and represented the least controversial application. Dr. Marcus Webb led that division and worked directly with Kathran engineers who brought perspectives shaped by their high gravity environment. The collaboration produced unexpected breakthroughs as alien scientists questioned human assumptions and forced reconsideration of approaches everyone thought was settled. A young Talari researcher named Shimura suggested modifications to neural core configurations based on her species' collective consciousness. Her ideas initially seemed incompatible with human designs until Webb realized she was describing quantum entanglement principles that could stabilize dark matter reactions. They tested Shimura's configurations and achieved 12% efficiency improvement, which was significant enough to revolutionize reactor design. Similar breakthroughs occurred across other divisions as diverse perspectives combined to solve problems no single species could address alone. Weapons development remained controversial, with 73 species refusing to participate in research they considered militaristic. Chun understood their concerns but argued that defensive capabilities were necessary in a galaxy where not everyone embraced cooperation. She established strict protocols limiting weapons, research to defensive systems, and required unanimous approval from an ethics committee before testing new designs. The propulsion division made the fastest progress since every species desperately wanted faster-than-light capabilities. The dark matter skips provided human engineers worked with Horth navigators who possessed natural spatial awareness that allowed them to calculate skip coordinates with incredible precision. Together, they developed navigation systems that combined human dark matter manipulation with Horth intuitive understanding of space. The resulting technology allowed skips across distances that humans alone could not safely calculate. 3 years into the initiative, humanity graduated the first class of alien dark matter engineers, representing 6 species. Each graduate returned home, authorized to begin construction of dark matter reactors and ships under initiative supervision. The Cathran launched their first dark matter vessel within 8 months and named her Persistence in honor of the quality that united their species with humanity. The ship performed flawlessly during trials, and the Cathran immediately began construction of a fleet. Other species followed with varying timelines based on their industrial capabilities and technological foundations. Galaxy began transforming as dark matter technology spread through channels. Humanity carefully monitored trade routes that required months using traditional jump drives now to days, which revolutionized galactic commerce. Communication networks upgraded to use dark matter relays, reducing message lag from years to hours across galactic distances. The bid is to use dark matter relays, reducing message lag from years to hours across distances. Deep void between galactic arms became accessible for the first time, allowing exploration of regions previously considered unreachable. But not everyone celebrated these changes. The Vryn Empire maintained official opposition, though their rhetoric grew less hostile as they realized isolation meant irrelevance. Traditional council species watched their long-standing technological advantages evaporate and struggled to adapt. A coalition of conservative species formed, calling themselves the Preservation Alliance, and argued that rapid change threatened social stability. Their leader was an Eldrin philosopher named Tarkin, who possessed genuine concerns about moving too quickly. Tarkin requested a meeting with Chun and traveled to Waystation 17 with a delegation of worried representatives. Chun received them in the station's main observation deck, where enormous windows showed ships from a dozen species working together in orbital construction. Taran admitted that his concerns were not about the technology itself, but about social disruption as established orders collapsed. His species had maintained their civilization's structure for 20,000 years, and he feared that rapid technological change would destroy cultural institutions. Chine listened carefully before responding that she understood his fears, because humanity faced similar concerns during their own rapid development. She explained that every major human technological advancement, from agriculture to nuclear power, created social upheaval that seemed catastrophic at the time. But humanity learned that trying to prevent change only made the transition more painful. When it inevitably arrived, Chun offered the Preservation Alliance a compromise, which was participation in the initiative with focus on social impact assessments. Proposed creating a division specifically dedicated to helping species manage cultural transitions during technological adoption. Tarkin considered this for several days before accepting and bringing his considerable philosophical expertise to the problem. The Social Integration Division became one of the initiative's most valuable assets, as it helped species navigate change without losing their cultural identities. Meanwhile, the original holdout species began reconsidering their positions as they watched neighbors achieve capabilities they could not match. The Sound Cooperative applied for membership 5 years after initially refusing, and admitted they could not afford to fall further behind Chun. accepted their application without judgment and assigned them to teams where their mathematical expertise proved invaluable. By the 8th year of the initiative, 47 species had developed dark matter capabilities, and another 30 were in training. The galaxy's political structure shifted as species with dark matter technology formed a loose confederation based on mutual defense and scientific cooperation. The old council maintained nominal authority, but real power flowed through initiative networks where humanity served as first among equals. Some species resented human influence, while others embraced it as the price of accessing revolutionary technology. Tensions emerged between species, developing at different rates, with some calling for slower adoption and others demanding acceleration. Chun navigated these conflicts by maintaining transparency and refusing to play favorites, which earned grudging respect even from critics. The Vrin finally requested membership during the 9th year after their government fell to reformers who recognized isolation was unsustainable. Admiral Krelvar himself led the Vrin delegation and met privately with Admiral Tanaka before official proceedings. They spoke as warriors who understood each other, and Krelvar admitted that losing to humanity had been the most valuable lesson of his career. Tanaka replied that humanity learned as much from showing mercy as the Vrin learned from receiving it. The Vrin brought their considerable military expertise to the initiative and helped develop defensive systems that made all member species more secure. Their participation marked a turning point as the last major opposition to dark matter technology collapsed. Jun stood in her office 10 years after the phase initiative began and reviewed progress reports that would have seemed impossible. During first contact, the galaxy was not perfect and tensions remained, but cooperation had replaced confrontation for most species. She received a message from Earth informing her that the United Earth Space Command wanted her to return home and lead the next phase of human exploration. Chun smiled and began composing her resignation from the initiative leadership while recommending Shimura as her replacement. The young Talari had grown into a brilliant administrator who understood both the science and politics of managing galactic cooperation. The appointment of a non-human to lead an organization humans created symbolized everything the initiative represented. The council chamber on Sanctum Prime had witnessed countless debates over 6,000 years, but nothing prepared its members for the transmission they received from the human warship. Captain Webb's technical specifications scrolled across holographic displays while 300 species tried to comprehend what they were seeing. The data included detailed schematics of dark matter cores and neural interface systems, along with comprehensive safety protocols, and most disturbing of all, casualty reports listing 247 human deaths. During development, Ambassador Li Chun stood before the assembly with quiet confidence that bordered on arrogance and waited for the inevitable explosion. The Vrin representative rose first, which surprised nobody since his species had dominated council military affairs for 3 millennia. High Commander Zr Kato demanded immediate answers about how humanity dared violate the forbidden technologies. Accord signed by every member species. Lay responded calmly that humanity never signed that accord because they were still probationary members and therefore technically not bound by restrictions they never agreed to. The chamber erupted as delegates shouted over each other in 40 languages. While translation systems struggled to keep pace, the Horth delegation called for sanctions, while the younger Talari species argued that humanity's success proved of accord was based on outdated failures rather than fundamental impossibilities. Rand, who had evaluated humanity 10 years earlier, stood trembling with what might have been rage or fear and declared that giving such power to one species threatened galactic balance. Li let the chaos continue for 7 minutes before she raised her hand, and the gesture somehow cut through the noise. She explained that humanity was not seeking dominance, but partnership, and that every species willing to accept the risks could access human research and develop their own dark matter technology. The offer stunned the assembly into silence because it violated every expectation they held about how power worked in galactic politics. Kal recovered first and announced that the Vryn Empire would never allow forbidden technology to spread regardless of human intentions. He declared that unless humanity immediately ceased all dark matter research and surrendered their warships, the Vryn would enforce compliance through military action. Lee asked if that was a formal declaration of hostilities, and ZRKTL confirmed that it was an ultimatum with a deadline of 10 standard days. The council session ended in disarray while member species scrambled to understand how first contact with a primitive civilization had escalated to potential war. In just 10 years, Webb received orders from Earth to maintain position and avoid provocation while the human fleet prepared for confrontation nobody wanted, but everyone expected. Vryn assembled 200 warships, which was the largest military deployment in 500 years, in a clear statement that they considered humanity an existential threat. Admiral Krelvar commanded the armada from his flagship, Eternal Victory, and studied tactical reports about human capabilities with growing confidence. His analysts concluded that despite superior individual ship performance, the humans lacked the numbers and combat experience that came from millennia of warfare. The Vryn fleet departed Sanctum Prime with full ceremony while crowds gathered to watch what everyone assumed would be a brief demonstration of overwhelming force. They chose the Threshold system as their meeting point with humanity, which was unclaimed space at the border between Council territory and unexplored regions. Webb moved Indomitable to Threshold and waited while 11 more human warships emerged from dark matter skips across the next 3 days. Admiral Keiko Tanaka commanded the human fleet from her flagship Ragnarok and held a final briefing with her captains. Before the Vryn arrived, she emphasized that their objective was deterrence, not destruction, and that killing Vryn warriors would make future peace nearly impossible. The captains understood, though several pointed out that showing mercy to an enemy attacking with lethal intent was a calculated risk. Tanaka replied that calculated risks were humanity's specialty and ordered the fleet to defensive positions spread across the system. The Vryn armada arrived exactly on schedule, emerging from jump space in perfect formation that showcased their tactical discipline. Krelvar broadcast on all frequencies, demanding human surrender and threatening complete annihilation if they refused. Tanaka responded by transmitting coordinates where the Vryn could safely recover crews after their ships were disassembled. Krelvar interpreted this as human arrogance and ordered his fleet into attack formation, confident that his 200 ships would overwhelm 12 human vessels. The battle began when Vryn cruisers launched missiles that filled space with thousands of warheads converging on human positions. Human point defense systems activated and dark matter accelerators swatted missiles from space faster than Vryn sensors could track before. The Vryn could process this defense. The human ships vanished using dark matter skips to appear in new positions surrounding the Vryn formation. Tanaka had achieved perfect encirclement in 17 seconds, while Krelvar was still processing the impossibility of what he witnessed. Human warships opened fire with dark matter beams that passed through Vryn shields without resistance and carved into ship hulls with surgical precision. They targeted propulsion and weapon systems exclusively, avoiding crew sections and life support in a demonstration of control that terrified the Vryn more than simple destruction. Krelvar ordered evasive maneuvers, but human ships matched every movement using dark matter skips to maintain their positions. Ragnarok demonstrated capabilities that redefined warfare when Tanaka ordered the activation of the dark matter pulse. A wave of exotic radiation expanded from the flagship, disrupting conventional power systems across a massive radius. 150 Vryn ships went dark, simultaneously floating dead in space, while their crews struggled to activate emergency systems. The Kook-Sima ships went dark, simultaneously floating dead in space, while their crews struggled to activate emergency systems. The remaining 50 ships attempted to flee, but human vessels pursued them, effortlessly disabling their jump drives before they could escape. The entire engagement lasted 17 minutes from first shot to complete. Vryn defeat Krolvar sat in his command chair watching emergency lights flicker while his once proud fleet drifted helplessly. Then Tanaka opened a channel, and her voice carried across every disabled Vryn vessel. She explained that humanity could have destroyed every ship and killed every warrior, but chose mercy because they sought partnership, not conquest. She transmitted data packages containing casualty reports from Project Nightfall, with names and stories of every human who died developing dark matter technology. Tanaka told Krelvar that humanity paid for their achievements in blood and brilliance, and would not surrender what they earned through sacrifice. She offered the Vryn a choice, which was accept humanity as equals and work together to develop safe applications of dark matter technology, or continue fighting, and discovered that mercy had limits. The transmission included detailed explanations of how human weapon systems worked, which was information that could help the Vryn develop countermeasures. Krolvar understood the message, which was that humanity was so confident in their technological advantage they could afford transparency. He accepted Tanaka's terms and requested assistance restoring his ships through operational status so his fleet could return home human. Engineering teams transferred to Vryn vessels and helped restore basic systems while treating Vryn wounded with medical technology that impressed even proud warrior species. The journey back to Sanctum Prime took 3 weeks using conventional drives, while the Vryn fleet limped home in formation with human escorts. News of the battle reached the council before the ships arrived and triggered emergency sessions that ran continuously. For Deshrak Tal faced calls for his resignation, while the Vryn Empire struggled to process defeat at the hands of species they considered technological infants. The Talari delegation proposed immediate revision of the Forbidden's technologies accord, while traditionalist species argued for escalation. Humanity waited patiently while the galaxy decided whether to embrace change or cling to certainty. Tanaka brought her fleet to Sanctum Prime and held position just outside weapons range as a reminder that human patience was not weakness. Lee addressed the council again, and this time nobody interrupted while she spoke. She proposed the joint technology initiative, where human scientists would work alongside council researchers to develop safe applications of dark matter technology. Any species willing to accept ethical guidelines and mutual defense agreements could participate and develop their own capabilities. The alternative was continued confrontation with a species that had proven both military superiority and willingness to share rather than dominate. The council voted over 3 days, while member species calculated their options. Final tally was 217 species in favor of the initiative, with 73 opposed and 10 abstaining. The accord was revised to permit dark matter research under strict international supervision, with humanity leading the regulatory committee. The galaxy had changed, and everyone knew nothing would ever be the same. 10 years passed while humanity maintained its probationary status and dutifully participated in council trade and cultural exchanges that seemed designed to keep them occupied with minutiae. The United Earth Space Command built 36 new vessels using improved fusion drives that impressed nobody but served humanity's expanding exploration and colonization efforts admirably. Council observers noted with approval that humanity appeared to be following the standard development path of young spacefaring species and projected full membership eligibility in another 50 years. What those observers did not know was that deep beneath the lunar surface humanity had constructed Research Station Nightfall, where 2,000 scientists worked on a project that would either transform everything or annihilate them. Dr. Sarah Chen now led the Exotic Physics Division, and had spent those 10 years assembling the brightest minds willing to pursue research that Council deemed suicidal. They worked in absolute secrecy, with funding buried in black budgets so deep that only a handful of Earth's leaders knew the station even existed. Chun stood in the primary observation chamber, watching technicians calibrate instruments around a spherical containment vessel that represented 5 years of failed prototypes and careful iteration. The early attempts had been disasters, with 3 test facilities destroyed and 47 researchers killed when dark matter interactions exceeded their models and tore reality apart in localized regions. But each failure taught them something new about how dark matter behaved, and more importantly, how it responded to quantum fluctuations that conventional physics said should not matter. The breakthrough came from Dr. Marcus Webb, who had been studying human neural patterns for completely unrelated medical research into consciousness and quantum brain activity. Webb presented his findings at a classified symposium and suggested that dark matter appeared to respond to complex quantum probability fields in ways that resembled how human neurons processed information. The comparison seemed absurd until Chun's team tested it and discovered that dark matter became marginally more stable when exposed to quantum fluctuations matching certain brain wave patterns. That led to the revolutionary idea of creating organic synthetic hybrid processors that could interface with dark matter, using principles borrowed from neuroscience rather than conventional engineering. They grew the first neural cores in specialized vats, combining human neural tissue with quantum processors and synthetic matrices that could survive the intense energies involved. The hybrid processors were alive in a limited sense and required constant monitoring to prevent degradation, but they could generate quantum fluctuations that dark matter responded to predictably. Chen authorized construction of Prototype 7, which incorporated 12 neural cores arranged in a dodecahedron configuration around a dark matter injection chamber. The test sequence began at 0400 hours station time, with every researcher watching from shielded observation posts scattered throughout the facility. Dark matter flowed into the chamber in quantities that would have terrified council scientists, and the neural cores activated in synchronized patterns that took months to develop. For 7 seconds, nothing happened, and Chun felt her heart sink with the familiar weight of another expensive failure. Then the dark matter began to stabilize as it formed structures that conventional physics said could not exist in normal space. But the neural cores convinced it otherwise through quantum persuasion. Energy readings spiked beyond anything fusion reactors could produce as the dark matter core achieved stable reaction, producing power equivalent to a small star. From a chamber barely 3 meters across, the control room erupted in cheers, while Chun stood perfectly still watching the readings and hardly daring to breathe. They maintained the reaction for 40 minutes before shutting down according to protocol, and every system performed exactly as the models predicted. Webb found Chun after the celebration died down and pointed up. They now faced an even more difficult challenge, which was scaling the system to practical sizes. Chun smiled and reminded him that humans had gotten quite good at scaling impossible technologies after their ancestors went from basic aircraft to moon landings in 66 years. The next 3 years brought rapid development as they built increasingly powerful reactors and solved problems the Council never even conceived of attempting. Station Nightfall expanded to house 5,000 personnel, and construction began on the first practical test vessel in lunar orbit, where curious eyes might notice the ship was massive at 500 meters and incorporated technology that blended human innovation with carefully studied council principles to create something entirely new. They named her Dark Star, and Chen insisted on being aboard for the first powered flight despite protests from safety officials who considered her too valuable to risk. The test crew numbered 30 volunteers who understood they might die if the dark matter core failed at full power in ways the smaller prototypes had not revealed. Dark Star launched from lunar orbit using conventional fusion drives until they reached safe distance from Earth and its orbital infrastructure. Chun gave the order, and engineering chief Kowalski activated the dark matter core using neural interface controls that felt disturbingly organic. Power flooded through systems designed to channel forces that should not exist in normal space, and Dark Star's engines achieved thrust that made fusion drives look like chemical rockets. They accelerated to 0.8 light speed in 4 minutes, which was faster than Council ships achieved after hours of carefully managed acceleration. Then Chun ordered the faster-than-light test and held her breath while Kowalski engaged the dark matter skip drive. Reality twisted around Dark Star as the ship briefly phased into dark matter currents that permeated all space, existing everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. They emerged 17 light-years from Earth, which was a distance that should have required 3 weeks using standard Council jump drives. The entire transit took 40 minutes. Chun ordered 6 more jumps across increasingly longer distances, while the crew documented every reading and the ship performed flawlessly. Dark Star returned to Earth after covering distances that would have taken months using Council technology and arriving home in less than a day. Chen transmitted her report directly to the Joint Chiefs using encryption so heavy it took 3 hours to decode. The response came within a day, which was authorization to begin fleet construction and a direct order from the Secretary General. To prepare for public demonstration, humanity built 12 warships over the next 18 months in orbital facilities that worked around the clock with thousands of workers sworn to secrecy. Each ship incorporated lessons learned from Dark Star, along with weapon systems that channeled dark matter in ways that made conventional armaments obsolete. The lead vessel was christened Indomitable and measured 5 kilometers long with dark matter cores powerful enough to move her mass as easily as a fighter craft. Captain Marcus Webb accepted command with the understanding that he would either become the most famous ship captain in human history or die in spectacular fashion. Fleet conducted exercises in deep space beyond Council sensor range while humanity prepared for the moment they would reveal their achievement. Chun knew the Council would react poorly to news that humans had succeeded where galactic civilization failed, but she also knew hiding the technology was impossible, and probably on why she proposed a demonstration at Sanctum Prime, which was the Council's capital world where representatives from every member species gathered. The Joint Chiefs approved her plan with the caveat that the fleet should be ready for hostile response. Webb took Indomitable to Sanctum Prime alone while the other 11 ships waited in nearby systems ready to respond if the Council decided humanity had overstepped the journey that should have taken 2 weeks using Council jump lanes required just 14 hours using dark matter skips. Indomitable emerged from her final skip at the edge of the Sanctum system and sent a simple message requesting permission to demonstrate new human propulsion technologies. The Council's initial response was polite confusion followed by alarm when their sensors registered the energy signature radiating from Indomitable's dark matter cores. Chen watched from Earth as the Council scrambled to analyze readings that made no sense according to their understanding of physics. They granted permission for the demonstration, probably because refusing would mean admitting fear, and the Council prided itself on scientific curiosity. Webb positioned Indomitable in clear space well away from shipping lanes and civilian traffic, while Council observation ships gathered at safe distance. The demonstration began with basic maneuvers that showcased dark matter propulsion capabilities as Indomitable accelerated and decelerated in ways that violated every principle of inertial physics. Then Webb executed a dark matter skip within the system, appearing instantaneously 20,000 kilometers from his starting position. Council observers registered disbelief, quickly followed by fear, as they recognized Forbidden's technology operating with impossible stability. Webb transmitted technical specifications openly, including safety protocols and detailed reports of every failure and casualty during development. Humanity was sharing the technology freely rather than hoe. The galaxy had rules, and the Council of Stellar Nations enforced them with quiet authority that spanned across 300 member species and 12,000 inhabited systems. For almost 6 millennia, the Council maintained peace through technology that worked predictably and safely, using antimatter reactions refined to perfection over millions of years of collective scientific advancement. Their warships glided through space on principles so well understood that accidents were statistical impossibilities, in their faster-than-light travel followed mathematical models verified by countless civilizations across eons. The Kryn trader vessel Fortunate Wind detected the anomaly first on a routine hauling run through the Outer Rim territories, where civilized space gave way to unexplored darkness. Captain Velk studied his sensor display with growing confusion as the readings suggested a vessel moving under fusion power, which was technology the Council had abandoned 3,000 years ago as inefficient and crude. His communications officer chirped nervously and announced that the unknown ship was broadcasting greetings in electromagnetic radiation using basic mathematical sequence. Velk authorized a response, and within hours, the two vessels floated side by side in the void, while the Kryn crew stared in amazement at the primitive but functional human ship. The humans called their vessel Prometheus, and their species had only recently achieved faster-than-light capability through brute force application of fusion drives that the Kryn found both impressive and terrifying in equal measure. Commander Robert Jang led the human delegation aboard the Fortunate Wind with a mixture of excitement and caution that Velk found refreshing after centuries of predictable diplomatic encounters. The humans were bipedal, like many species, but their eyes held something Velk had not seen in council chambers for longer than he could remember, which was raw curiosity unburdened by millennia of standardized thinking. Jang explained that humanity had detected Kryn ships months ago and had spent that time preparing for contact while hoping desperately that whoever they met would be friendly. Velk found himself liking these strange newcomers who wore their vulnerability openly and asked questions about everything from Kryn biology to trade routes with an enthusiasm that bordered on childlike wonder. He made a decision that would alter galactic history and offered to escort the Prometheus to Way Station 17, where humanity could be formally introduced to the greater galactic community. The journey took 3 weeks, during which Velk shared basic information about council structure, and the humans absorbed everything with terrifying speed. Dr. Sarah Chun led the human science team, and her questions cut directly to the heart of complex topics that most species took decades to fully comprehend. She wanted to know about power generation and propulsion, theory and weapons technology, and the limits of what council science deemed possible. Velk provided what information he could, though certain topics remained restricted to member species, and he noted how Chun's eyes lingered on mentions of forbiddance. Research Way Station 17 orbited a neutron star and serviced ships from 40 species, making it a perfect introduction to the diversity and scale of galactic civilization. The station master was a Horth named Grelick, who had processed first contact protocols for 6 previous species and approached humanity with professional detachment. He assigned the humans temporary quarters and scheduled their appearance before a council subcommittee that would evaluate their technological development and determine appropriate membership status. The evaluation took 2 days, during which council scientists examined every system aboard the Prometheus with instruments so advanced the humans could barely understand their function. The final report classified humanity as a Tier 7 civilization, which meant probationary membership with restricted access to council databases and technology lead. Evaluator Max Stren delivered the verdict with barely concealed condescension and explained that humanity's fusion drives were adequate for their current needs, though would require upgrading to antimatter systems before full membership could be considered. The Council offered humanity access to basic scientific databases and suggested they spend the next century or two studying before attempting to contribute to galactic research. Zhang accepted the terms with diplomatic grace, though. Chun noticed how his jaw tightened when MXTREN referred to human technology as charmingly antiquated. That evening in their assigned quarters, Chun downloaded everything she could access from the Council databases with particular focus on theoretical physics and experimental technologies. She found references to something called the Forbidden Technologies, a code which listed research areas banned after catastrophic failures in the distant past. Dark matter manipulation headed that list with warnings in a dozen languages, explaining how two civilizations had nearly destroyed their home systems attempting to harness forces they could not control. The database included fragmentary reports from 4,000 years ago, describing how the Zenth Collective had succeeded in creating a stable dark matter reactor for exactly 47 seconds before it collapsed into a micro-black hole. Chun read those reports 3 times while her mind raced with possibilities that Council scientists had apparently abandoned as too dangerous to pursue. She made copies of everything related to dark matter research and filed them in a secure partition with a simple note that read reasons they failed and ways we might not. The next morning, humanity formally accepted probationary membership and received coordinates for trade stations and diplomatic channels. Vuk found Chun before the Prometheus departed and asked if humanity would follow the expected path of adopting Council technology. Chun smiled in a way that made the Kryn trader suddenly uncertain and replied that humans had a saying about how well they followed expected paths. She thanked him for his kindness during first contact and suggested they would surprise each other again. Some Develk watched the Prometheus depart using those crude fusion drives and felt something he had not experienced in his 300 years, which was genuine anticipation for an uncertain future. The human ship accelerated away from Waystation 17, carrying with it knowledge that the United knowledge that the Council had buried and forgotten. Chen gathered her science team in the research lab once they entered faster than light transit and displayed the dark matter files on every available screen. Team reviewed the data in silence, broken only by occasional gasps, as they recognized what the Council had deemed impossible. Marcus Webb, who specialized in quantum mechanics, finally spoke and pointed out that every single Council failure had attempted to contain dark matter using conventional force field. Chun nodded and suggested that perhaps the problem was not that dark matter could not be harnessed, but that the Council had been trying to force it into boxes designed for conventional matter. She proposed that humanity approach the problem differently, by working with dark matter's unique properties rather than against them. The Prometheus continued its journey home while the science team began formulating theories that would either revolutionize galactic civilization or kill them all. Trying behind them, Waystation 17 continued its routine operations, with the Council never suspecting that the primitive newcomers carried seeds of transformation. Volk filed his first contact report with a footnote that his instincts suggested humanity would either fail spectacularly or succeed beyond all reasonable expectation. The Council filed that report in archives where it gathered dust alongside 10,000 other first contact summaries, and humanity began the long work of proving that sometimes the most dangerous thing in the galaxy was not the forbidden technology itself, but rather the audacity to believe restrictions only applied to those who accepted them.